All right, today I'm talking to James Jowsey. Thank you so much for joining me today, James. First off, can you give me a little bit of, maybe a little bit personal background, training background, and kind of how you ended up where you are today?
Played professional football till I was about 21. Whilst I was playing, I was always interested in the strength and conditioning, nutrition, trying to keep on top of yourself as an athlete. So I kind of made the break into the personal training world. So I started in personal training in 2005, and then always had a interest in the movement side of things when I was trying to coach clients and stuff and see that everybody squatted differently and things like that. Found CrossFit myself, which kind of reinforced the whole wanting to get people's mechanics solved. Kind of been doing that ever since, really. Numerous courses, qualified sports therapist now, all those kind of things. Done some of the LPT stuff, but a lot of it is the work I've done with 3D people and my mentor, Phil Mansfield, and kind of been learning from him since 2008, and applying it to CrossFit.
Wow, so that's CrossFit 3D in Manchester, right?
Yeah, I work out of CrossFit 3D. It's not my box. I'm just have residency in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been in Manchester, been with 3D since its inception.
So I think a very famous athlete to come out of Manchester is Sam Briggs.
Yep.
Have you ever worked with her or any athletes, maybe regionals, games, like competitive in the UK?
I worked with Sam. I started working with Sam in 2011, about during the Open 2011. So she, I think it was like 2 weeks out from the first Open WOD, which was the double unders snatches that we repeated last year. And she was unable to move her shoulder properly. So we got in. Carl Steadman said, come see Jowsey. So we got her through that. And obviously she qualified for the games that year. And I went out to Carson with her to the games. So then we worked from worked all the way through 2012, which is where the knee injury started. After a split jerk accident. We didn't know the extent of the knee injury. We were going through the whole NHS, the NHS system at the time, and Sam wasn't disclosing exactly how bad the knee was. Just like she didn't disclose that she'd broken her foot before before regionals this year, but that's why she's the athlete she is. The good part about it is she can switch her mind off and just go. The bad part about it is she can push her body deeper than anybody else is probably in CrossFit.
Wow. Through
that pain barrier. So yeah, we were working regularly, all the way through until probably August this last year, where she's obviously been out in America since. So yeah, I worked with Sam on a regular basis. And I'm lucky enough I work with Steve Fawcett as well.
Okay. Yeah, I saw his name pop up in on the regionals in the Meridian this year.
Yes, he's qualified to go to the games.
That's the first British male, isn't it? Ever.
In modern day games, yes.
Yeah.
In modern day games it is. We have had a British male out there in 2009.
Really? Who was that?
A guy called Jamie Crichton.
Wow, that's awesome! I didn't even know that, and I've watched all the 2009 games. I love them.
Yeah,
I think that was the. I think I watched I found it just after the 2008 games, like CrossFit in general, and so I think my girlfriend actually, she wants to get me that T-shirt that's like Miko is my hero.
He's a lot of people's heroes. He's a legend. But yeah, no. So yeah, so Steve's kind of the first in the modern day games where I think when Miko went, there was only like 13 people that were in the sectional. So yeah, we had a British guy go then. But yeah, Steve's the first since it's become the big hundreds of thousands of entrants. Yeah. So I worked with Steve. I used to work with Phil Hesketh before he moved to Dubai, who's also qualified for the games.
Okay.
I worked with a lot of kind of the regional. I've seen most of the regional UK guys, and some of the girls from this year's UK as well, like Hilary Reardon, Becky Pikett, people like that. So I'm lucky I get to work with a lot of good guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know a lot of people from a CrossFit background, myself included, whenever you think mobility movement, you think Kelly Starrett.
Yeah.
And I've heard you've actually got a very, very different take on it. I know he's big on, joint capsule, sliding surfaces, CNS, and he uses a lot of, banded distraction, lacrosse balls, foam rollers and stuff. But so I have that as kind of one paradigm of stretching and mobility. But I also come from when I was a kid, I did lots of Taekwondo, and then I did Muay Thai kind of late teens, early 20s, and that's a totally different approach. That was just a lot of static stretching and then a lot of kicking, I guess, to get it.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break down what you do and whether it's kind of more close to this traditional stretching side or the kind of hack yourself with a foam roller and a lacrosse ball side?
Neither.
Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, I used foam rollers way back when in the day, and soon realised that they didn't work. Because people that use foam rollers just spend all the time on foam rollers. Nothing changes. They keep having to smash, whatever crap terminology has also been called for it on a daily basis, trigger pointing constantly. So they're not actually, all they're doing with a foam roller is desensitizing the pain gate theory and our perception of pain. Like the movement mechanic can't actually change by rolling around on a hard inanimate object. So definitely not in that field. And then the static stretching. Those two opposing fields actually both have the same common denominator in the fact that you're not teaching movement in either, because actually you're doing everything statically. So if we're staying still, how are we teaching movement? Like you're lying down on a ball, so how is something learning to move? And especially with the fact that the body is so specific on the skills that it learns. If you're lying down, it learns how to be better at lying down. Whereas as soon as we stand up, everything changes. Gravity's affecting the body from a different angle, so therefore all the muscles are under a different state of tension, because the tension is coming from the top down rather than down through the chest. So that is going to affect neurological drive to the muscles and their understanding of control. So you can release that muscle, but actually you've taught no neurology, so therefore it doesn't understand how to move. So the neurological pattern that's been learned creates the muscle sequence, so the movement stays the same. That's kind of where I am on the whole scenario. Whereas teaching a joint to move is, whilst I'm doing it, the way we manipulate the body is by using the hands to encourage different parts of the body to, if it needs to stretch, to be stretched. But at the same time as understanding, right, okay, I'm stretching the hip flexor, but at the same time as stretching the hip flexor, the glutes learning to work. All these muscles are learning how to communicate with each other, using that nervous system to produce coordinated movement. Whereas if I just stretch that hamstring, the hamstring doesn't learn how to work at the same time as the hip flexor. So therefore the sequencing part is missed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess from maybe the truth behind it was I think I actually got quite flexible doing taekwondo. I could, kick people in the heads and stuff. Very, very inflexible in other ways, but it was probably because I was stretching and then reinforcing that movement pattern, and it was the technique of kicking probably more than the actual stretching that got me there.
Yes, I mean the thing is, well, I mean, I'm treating a lot of martial artists now that have kind of got into the CrossFit world, and they're all coming to me with lower back problems, and this is
I'm one of them.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like the nature of that stretching, and Kelly's stretching is no different. Like, he puts you in extreme positions. He's driving people to be able to do the splits. It's that thing of when you take up so much range of motion in the joint, it's got nowhere else to go. So you're then getting a stretch. You're getting a maximal loading on the hips. Let's say we just go into a straddle. Sorry, is it a straddle? Or which one's a box? Which one's straddle? Either way.
Straddle's out.
Out to the side, yeah. So let's say we go into the straddle, for example. Like, you've taken those muscles to end tension, and now your pelvis, in effect, if you try and move your pelvis from side to side, it can't move anywhere. Yep. So the only way we then develop further stretch into those hips is by moving the upper body. So the closest joints to the pelvis are the low back. So then what we're actually doing is we're making that low back more flexible, more hypermobile, teaching that to become hypermobile to get a further stretch into the adductors, into the hamstrings, into the glutes. So your method of stretching, your sequencing is mobile hips via a hypermobile spine, and then that's where all the issues kind of come from.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I've got a hypermobile lower back, I guess you say, and I've actually kind of herniated 2 discs in it now, so it's
right.
It's not very mobile like right this second, but historically, I'm the kind of person that could overextend on a, very prone to overextending on movements, and go very extreme lordosis. And is that something you see a lot with guys that have had that kind of static stretching background?
Yeah, you see that hypermobile back, and then a hypermobile low back with a pelvis that you've taught it to be super flexible, so a pelvis that can't control motion anymore, because you've taught it to be so flexible. And this is the thing with a static stretching or anything, like, you spend a lot of time at end range in a stretch. Like, a muscle's job is to protect joints. But what we're doing in sports, and this is the great thing about how the body adapts and finds a way of adapting to any task that we ask it, whether that's good or bad for the body. It neurologically, when you take it to end range, you are desensitizing the nervous system and stopping those muscles from being tight at end range where they're supposed to be tight. The muscle's job is to protect the joint, but what we're going is, no, I want you to be loose at end range. It's like, well, I don't want to be loose, because when I'm at end range, I want you to stop me from dislocating something. But nature of the sport, we ask for that. The problem being, like, you're getting into that ridiculous range and not feeling any tension in end range. Then when you come back to then squat or deadlift, if you can't feel your hamstring in the splits, whichever variation, then you're not going to feel your hamstring work when you're in a squat, because that's nowhere near as big a stretch to the hamstring as that isolated stretches. So it's like, that's that path of, there isn't many sports in the world where I want someone to have that flexibility, and it's kind of that fine line of, like, how much flexibility do we need to be able to do the sport versus like just flexibility, what I call flexibility for flexibility's sake. That's not a good thing. I treat as many martial artists, ballet dancers, yoga people who all have these lower back, all have injuries, flexibility, and people are classing me as a mobility guy. I don't call myself a mobility guy. I'm a movement guy. I get to understand bodies and understand what type of, how training be that strength training, be that balance work, stability training, flexibility training, all those things have a reaction in the body that gives it a positive, but also possibly, depending on the function, whatever that chosen sport is, possibly a negative. And then go, well, do we need that? Do we want that? Because now I'm opening up my athlete for a low back issue because his hamstrings don't work in a squat when he's at max load, which isn't, and now we've kind of failed. So mobility for mobility's sake, flexibility, etc., is as poisonous to the body as being stiff as a board.
Wow!
We have to find this middle ground, or find the right amount of motion that allows us to succeed at our sport.
Wow! Like that's a really kind of, I've never thought about that perspective. You always seem to think like, okay, more must be better. I guess that's the nature of maybe people that get into CrossFit in the first place. So I know, going back to kind of the base guru for mobility in the CrossFit is Kelly Starrett, and he distills movement down to like very, very base archetypes. He talks about the basic squat, the basic bending, proximal distal loading, neutral spine, external rotation, inflection, and he seems to apply that across
rotation, flexion.
Sorry? Oh yeah, external rotation, inflection, internal rotation and extension. And he seems to apply that across the board for a lot of movements. And so you hear the same Kichinko's, shove your knees out, neutral spine, bend the bar, twisting. Do you think there's a bit of an error in applying such broad terms to such a broad range of movement? Yes.
Especially if he's talking about internal rotation and extension, because those two joint motions aren't coupled. It's internal rotation and flexion. So, for example, at the knee, and you can try this yourself. Like if you turn your toe outwards, bring it off the floor, and literally just flex your knee like you're doing a hamstring curl.
Yeah.
Kind of get a feeling of how that, like, feel where your patella's going. Like, it feels a bit kind of unnatural, a bit grindy, especially if I now turn your toe in.
Yeah.
And now flex your knee.
Yeah, it feels better.
Feels how smooth that actually is. Like, that is the coupled motion at the knee. So I find it quite scary that saying that flexion and external rotation go together when that's taught at physio school. So I have zero idea where, as a couple, that's taught there. So I have zero idea where that external rotation comes from.
Yeah.
In terms of the hip, pushing out the knees is only going to make the glute, is only going to expose the lower back. Because if we get an elastic band, in fact, have we got one here? If I take an elastic band, I'll use this cable. Let's get a cable. Cool. So we got this cable here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we agree that, so in the isolated world of muscle function, based on cadaver studies, some guy cut open a body and pulled on the glute and went, right, the glute extends the hip, it externally rotates the hip, and it abducts the hip.
Yep.
Based on shortening principles. So, I mean, this isn't the best example, but so on the flip reverse side, if I flex the hip, that would lengthen the glute. If I internally rotate the hip, that would lengthen the glute. And if we adduct the hip, that would lengthen the glute.
Yeah.
With me there?
Yeah, I see what you mean. You take tension off it by abducting.
By shortening it.
Yeah.
Yes. So by abducting and externally rotating, we take tension off the glute. Whereas we're squatting, all I want is to load up that elastic band make it create as much elastic tension in there as possible. Like that is what the glute's designed to do, which is why subconsciously, when you watch Olympic lifters, well, not subconsciously in everybody, like without doubt, at max lift, everybody's knees drive inwards at max load.
Yeah.
Because the body wants to find the glute.
Yeah.
So saying drive the knees out is actually only making their glute worse. What should happen is we just get people to sit down. Like, don't think about your knees. Sit down. Your knees should track. Your knees will naturally track unless you have a super weak glute or some ridiculous tightness somewhere, which I can't comment on without seeing an individual's body. But in theory, the knee is just a hole. It's a hole in the middle of the leg. If my foot goes one way, the knee follows that. If I'm on a football field and I step one way with my left leg, then the knee will come in on the right leg because my hips have travelled one way. So that knee kind of gets pulled around depending on where the foot and hip go. So in theory, when we squat, that knee should just go straight up and down without being driven out. And if the weight's manageable, the knees won't come in. So that the knee should just be neutral. But if it comes in and it pops in, it's only because the body needs the glute, because it's a max load and there's nothing wrong with that. So like I said, knees out for the sake of knees out is only a bad thing, whereas just neutral. So we don't need to cue knees out. We just go sit down. We only need to say knees out to the athlete as a coaching cue. We only need to say knees out to that person if the knees are falling in. But what we really need to do is work on that person's hips and find out, is it a weak glute? Is it a tightness in the adductors? Is it, well, what is it? Let's find those reasons out. Let's not just tell them to push the knees out. So that's kind of where I am on that whole kind of knees out. He's trying to say that it's torque, but it's torque of the hip joint rather than the muscles, and it's the muscles that elicit force. So I want the muscles to work because the glutes are the most powerful body.
It's really interesting that you're saying that because I've been running running a CrossFit facility for 5 years now, and on your level 1 cert you learn shove the knees out, push the hips back. And from your perspective, from what you've just said, I guess you have to shove the hips back because it's the only way to put tension back on the glutes once the knees are out, right? You're kind of
you find
so you're giving away that upright spine, that upright back and that kind of vertical position in order to find some tension because the knees are so far out. For the last probably 2 years, I've for most people, I've found the best improvements in their squatting, and I've seen people put 10 kilos on their squat in a session by just saying, hey, look, just fucking sit down and stand back up. Don't worry about shoving the hips back. Don't worry about shoving the knees out. Just relax, sit down, and stand back up. And it's amazing that that's not more common.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, I never thought to do that. I'm like, really? You never thought to just go down and up? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, because
that's the thing. Like, by pushing outwards, like I said, just by moving those, do I want one more energy transfer if all my joints are stacked above each other, so ankle, knee, hip, or if that one's going out that way, I'm losing energy pushing that out, and that's taken away from that literal vertical, like, well, go this way, not go that way.
Yeah.
Like, that's just wasting,
exactly.
It's wasting energy.
You're just driving force away from where you're trying to be productive with it.
Yes. Exactly. Let's take, that's just physics.
Yeah.
It's probably physics of motion rather than, let's not worry about the body, let's just about physically physics-wise, what do we want to happen?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know what, interestingly, I think the times when I've made my butt the sorest, like when I've had like sore glutes, and I think with a lot of my clients that I work with, it's when you start doing split squats, heavy lunges, that kind of thing, where the hip is not externally rotated, it's pointing straight forward, and the toes are tracking straight forward, and it's the single leg stuff that when you're neutral and forward that makes your hips go, makes your glutes go, holy shit, and you get that big, that soreness the next day.
I mean, we've got obviously everyone that's been to see me jokes about the amount of lunges that they get, because I use the lunge a lot and we manipulate, like say, hand positions to work different, to encourage parts to work, to stretch other areas. I use millions of lunge variations. We can change foot position, we can change direction of lunge. Like say, we can use arm reaches. There's multiple things we can do to manipulate how hips work, stretch, muscles, fire, etc. just by changing that lunge. But I mean, is that thing with, if the squat is kind of, that's the perfect environment to get the glutes working. When the glutes don't work in a squat, it can be because of imbalance, because not many people are perfectly balanced between the two legs, so the pelvis is just completely getting pulled one way, which just affects how the glutes work. So that crossover to squatting without glutes is common, but because of people's dysfunction and training history and everything like that. When you go so heavy in your squat sessions and you've never used your glutes before, if you stay squatting heavy, then all your body's going to remember, like your body has a neurological memory of, how do I overcome this load? Well, it's by using quads and not using glutes. So you do that squat session, and again, all you do is reinforce quads to work and glutes not to work. So to teach glutes to work, we've got to come away, teach them to work in a lunge, so they learn how to work all the joints together, and then put them back into that squat environment, but at a working level where the body isn't over challenged and overstimulated, and it can then the glutes learn to squat as well. So you've always got to come back to the function that we want, be it the squat, if it's especially if it's CrossFit.
So I've got another question. It seems like, I think it's a little bit less now, but a few years ago, quad dominance was this like big thing. Everyone's quad dominant, and it's the worst thing in the world ever. I've got a little bit of a theory that to be a top level CrossFitter, this isn't to be a healthy, happy human being, but to be a top level CrossFitter, there's such a demand of an upright torso in the thrusters and wall balls and snatches and clean and jerks that, I mean, it might be actually valuable to be a little bit quad dominant, because you've got such a demand of that upright torso, and you see all the top athletes just have enormous quads.
Yeah.
You see it with weightlifters as well. So I guess that's where you start getting the difference between being a competitive exerciser, fitness person, and being someone that wants it for like health benefits, and and the kind of way that you teach them to move based on that, right?
I hear what you're saying in terms of the nature of their position will mean that the glutes aren't working as much, but they should still be working. And it's kind of, I suppose, it's on that flip reverse of, so we're saying the more upright you are, the more the quads work. So therefore, the more flexed you are, the more the glutes work, which actually is how functionally the glutes do work. They work more through that torso flexion helps the glutes to work. Mm-hmm. Which is why, like the compensations that we get in the squat are the body trying to find the glutes. So people either lean forward and the ass jacks up in the air because it's trying to recruit the posterior chain, or the knees drive inwards, because either way it's trying to recruit those glutes. So it's kind of that thing of, you've got to start from a base of, if your glutes don't work in flexion, so say in a deadlift, because let's just say it's not similar to, it's different joint angles, but if the glutes aren't working in that flex spinal position with hip flexion, then they're definitely not going to work when we come all the way out the other direction. So you could say the goal is get the glutes working in the deadlift, and then bit by bit by bit, the glutes will still contribute to that upward squat. Yeah. With that dominant quad dominance, but the glutes are still working.
I see what you mean.
So the goal should always be the goal should always be to get that glute working. But yeah, understanding then in my function, I've got slightly more quad bias. But now it's quads working slightly more, but with a glute that's helping out, rather than quads doing everything completely on their own, which is why people get patellofemoral syndromes, patella tendonitis, and everything like that.
Yeah, I think with the people I've seen that actually are prone to knee injuries, it's when they don't even have that glute firing in hip flexion, you know. And a lot of times you'll see them like they're not physically aware of how to turn their hips over and come through that. Actually, that makes me think. So, you know, you hear a lot of this work about neutral spine, neutral spine, neutral spine. I've actually been for the last year, and it's helping my back a lot. And I'm getting a lot of benefits. It's very, very different to CrossFit. I'm following the Coach Sommer's gymnastic bodies. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
It's a really cool program.
Yeah. I've one of the guys at the gym got it.
Yeah. And damn it, where was I going with this? What were we talking about? Glutes, quads,
neutral spine.
Neutral spine, right? And I've noticed.
Neutral spines.
Yep. And I've noticed that actually in that program, there's a really big emphasis on learning how to extend, how to flex, bending, rotation, and kind of really exposing your spine to more than just a neutral spine. And it's made me think that, you know, some movements work better with a slightly flexed position, like a hollow body, you know, and some movements work better with a slightly extended position. What's your take on that? Or do you think when lifting you should try and keep neutral? Or, you know, when someone says extension, is that to try and hit neutral by over cueing, or like where do you sit on that?
Probably the same. Like if I go back to that muscle function thing again, and this is the same as this actually mirrors the powerlifting world that everybody then kind of argues against because it's not neutral and it's not safe. But if we go back to that, looking at the muscles of the back and go, well, what lengthens? So if I've got an elastic band and we lengthen those erectors, then if I can put that elastic band there and we can no longer move this joint here. So all the joints of the back sit underneath this elastic band. If that elastic band is taut and lengthened, the spine can't move. Whereas if that elastic band is shortened, then the spine has more room to go. So that whole it goes against the learnings of all exercise. But short isn't tight, isometric isn't tight, long is tight.
Long is tight.
So long is tight because long is that elastic band that's stopping and decelerating, whereas short isn't decelerating anything; it's just staying short. I mean that is what the powerlifters do. They set up in that slightly lengthened position, and the back is more protected.
I see what you mean. So they're setting up a little bit extended in order to get more length in the. No, sorry,
they set up a little bit flexed. So the powerlifters choose a little bit of flexion.
So you see it a lot in strongman, like when you're trying to lift a stone or a log, and you sight with a slightly flexed position, and you think that's actually more stable than being an extension. Yes,
it is.
Wow, that is
which is why the back is there. I mean, this is the thing. I know people are gonna go mental at that.
Oh, dude, controversy's good.
But if you go to that horrendous deadlifting guy in the gym who has no respect of neutral spine and ask him how his back is from deadlifts, he'll tell you he's absolutely fine.
Wow. You know, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen guys that deadlift like shit.
Guys, do you feel your back when you do that? You're like, no, I'm all right.
Yeah.
and that's it. It's not to say do it. I'm not advocating repetitively picking up inflection. That I need to kind of set that one straight there. It's the same as knees. It's exactly the same as knees in. Like that whole, if the body is starting to knees in is a failure.
Mm-hmm.
So knees in is a sign that it's going.
Yep.
But repetitive, like if they're now starting to kiss each other, that's not a good thing. Like you've gone too far.
Yeah.
And is that thing of like setting up in slight flexion that doesn't move is not such a bad thing. Like, but going into an angry cat when you're deadlifting is not good. It is not good for the back. But the thing is, we're just talking about one plane. We're talking about one plane of motion, and people will always go, "Oh, well, I hurt my back because I lost my neutral spine." But the thing is, that's only taking into account viewing the body from the side. Yeah. If you view the body from the back, and actually what you might even see is a pelvis that drops and a pelvis that rotates one way. Yeah. It's the combination of all three planes that screws the back up, not pure flexion.
Yeah.
So it was probably because all those three things happened at once, rather than actually I picked up a weight in flexion.
Yeah. So, I know personally, like when I hurt my back, I've been deadlifting the day before with no issues.
Yeah.
And then I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu the next day. And,
right.
Just wrestling, I think I was probably overextended and off to the side and, you know what I mean? And twisted and probably everything you can imagine can possibly happen. It was that perfect storm that went...
Sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like I did it because my back flexed or extended. It was, like you said, it was a whole combination that set it off.
Because we don't train for that either. I say we train in this one kind of one dimension, but then it's 3 dimensions that kill us. The 3 dimensions of a sport. That's why sport batters people, because of its multi-planar kind of application. And what we've got to try and do is bulletproof people for that. So going lighter, go light, go ugly, just to give the body a knowledge of it. But that's kind of
So it's funny actually that philosophy of go light, go ugly. Again, in that gymnastics bodies, the Coach Summers program, the Foundation 1, Foundation 2 now actually for some things. There's a huge focus on actually squatting purposely. One of the first progressions of a pistol is actually purposely squatting with the knees in. He does something called Jefferson curls, which I found have really helped my back, where you try and round each vertebrae kind of one at a time and curl down and then back up. I think, I'm doing that with 5 kilos right now for sets of 5. He says that his top gymnast can do that with body weight for sets of 5.
Right. Wow.
So I'm guessing that just builds a ton of resilience in the tendons and ligaments in your back, which is the exact opposite of keep a neutral spine to totally avoid that.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the thing. Like your body, going back to the neurology of movement, your body has memory for what it's done the most of. So if you train it to stay neutral, then it knows how to be strong in neutral. But as soon as it comes out of that, it has no knowledge of being there. So how can it be strong there?
Yeah.
Like the thing with ACL rehab, ACL rehab, everybody stays, well, let's keep neutral. And initially, in the initial stages of rehab, obviously that is where you want to be. But eventually we've got to teach the body what knee valgus is. Because if it's never been to knee valgus, it has no neurological understanding of control of knee valgus. So it doesn't know how to protect itself. So then the knee just keeps going. The knee will cave in then. So that same thing applies all the way around the body, is we need to give the body that knowledge of the ugly, so it's got a memory for, I've been there, I know what I need to do, I know how to get out of this position. If I've not been there, the body is strong where you train it to be, which is why I get CrossFitters, and they can't move sideways because all they do is go up and down, and they're weak when they go to the side. So, or whatever, choose a sport and we can find a weakness somewhere. And that's the thing, is the less weaknesses, the more movement options we've got, the more positions we can show strength in, the better we are, rather than just going, well, I'm strong here, but as soon as my foot position changes or as soon as my spine goes here, I'm weak as anything.
Yeah, it sounds actually like that's pretty common with, have you heard of Ido Portal?
Yes.
Yeah, Israeli guy. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he does a lot of like weird floor crawling and capoeira stuff, and off-axis handstands and stuff like that. And so I guess that is effectively hitting all these kind of off-axis, out of alignment positions in a controlled fashion, and you build a resilience there. And now I think about it, the original 100-word definition of fitness, that Greg Glassman put out for CrossFit. The last bit that everyone always forgets is regularly learn and play new sports. And I guess in his head, if you were constantly learning and playing new sports, then you'd get some exposure to all of these different things and kind of help, round out the joints and the tendons and ligaments. And I think that's when people take on CrossFit as their sport, they're forgetting that, and that's why I hurt my back doing jiu-jitsu, with some light sparring and So, do you encourage people to go out? You're like, hey, go play some squash or learn how to surf or like?
Well, I mean, I think I train. It just depends on their goal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, most of the guys, obviously, their goal is CrossFit. So, therefore, we stay as close to CrossFit as we can.
Yep.
But then I choose exercises. I'll choose a lateral lunge to do X, Y, Z to help them. And that, but that's all with the goal of CrossFit. So yeah, that people should go out and play sports. That's for sure. But like, if your goal is to go to the CrossFit Games, then everything needs to be that specific. I think the thing with like the Portals is he is a ninja. Like his stuff, like the stuff that I've seen of him, what he does is incredible. But the thing is, like going to those ranges again, he is teaching the control. Like he is teaching control, but it's control slowly. So you then need to get very specific again and go, right, well, what happens when the joint's moving at 100 miles an hour? Does it still... Because in theory, I don't want to be going at 100 miles an hour to end of joint range. I want to be... The body will put the brakes on way before that. And yeah, so that's kind of part of it with the Portals kind of application. It looks amazing, but then sometimes what I see of it is very much like a door and a hinge. Is like door only opens one way, so there's only one way it can go. Whereas they're almost trying to, again, it's not stretching for stretching's sake, it's movement for movement's sake.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get all the joints to move in 3 planes as much as physically possible. Whereas a joint can give you, if it gives you, for example, if you go into go left foot forward in like a split jerk stance.
Yep.
So if you go into that position, if you straighten your back foot and just start pushing your left knee forward, I'm implying that your left leg forward. So just go to left leg forward for me.
Yep.
So back foot straight.
Yep.
And now just drive your left knee forward. So you'll get a mild stretch on your right hip flexor.
Yep.
And you'll travel quite far forwards. If you now turn the toe in on your right foot, that's it. And now drive your left knee forwards. You won't travel as far forwards, and you'll have more stretch on the hip flexor. So is that a thing of when we increase the range of motion, we've now increased the range of motion in the transverse plane. So we've gone from neutral to internal rotation. So we've taken up range of motion in the transverse plane. But now that means that we can't have as much sagittal plane because a muscle can only move so far.
Yep.
So it's the same with muscles and joints. Once we take up range of motion in one plane, it can't give as much in the other 2 planes. So it's kind of like it's constantly offsetting and going, well, okay, if you want me here, then you can't have this. So trying to train to have all 3 at the same time is then teaching dysfunction because it's moving away from what the body's designed to do.
Oh man! So it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, and
yes. Like, unfortunately, I'd say this to people the thing is that's the thing with the body. If we go by design, then all we should really be doing is running, because that's all we're designed to do, really.
Not
is
climbing or swimming or nothing?
oh yeah, climb, swim. We'd argue that I don't know, swimming could be done, but pretty much just that monostructural kind of stuff like that, but not with techniques, not with like walking on my hands is dysfunctional because if we were designed to walk on our hands, they'd be our feet. like, but I'm not saying don't do it. This is that thing of if I choose to do something to my body, there is a cause and effect. Some of that is good and some of that is bad. So there is no perfect way. All we've got to do is, well, how do I want to spend my life? I want to spend my life doing CrossFit. Therefore, I accept that this is what's going to get my body really good, but this is what are going to be my side effects. You chose martial arts. You got really flexible, but then your side effect was hypermobile low back, and now you got low back issues. But in the meantime, you knocked a load of people out and won titles and everything like that. Yeah. Or you decide, oh, well, everything's dangerous, so I'm going to sit on a couch, eat food, get fat, and die of a heart attack. What we've got to do is just enjoy life. It's not worry too much about it. Yeah. It's just go, like, it's this extreme, like, it's just when people, this is, what I'm trying to say is there is no way. There's only the way that you choose to go. The way is your way, and it's just then what I do is facilitate, well, how do I get you to walk down that path with as little problems as possible? Mm-hmm. Like Portal's, his way looks ninja, but it's not been around long enough, and seeing what he's seen and going through those examples that we've talked about, I don't see it as being good for the body. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, long term, is like, we need to see what's he like when he is 80 years old.
So
but in the meantime, he lived a ninja life.
Yeah,
it's whether he cares what he was like at 80 or not. So
yeah, I think that there's always like past a certain point, there's always a trade-off between health and performance. And if you want to be the healthiest person in the world, then you probably just walk around and occasionally climb over things, occasionally swim over there, and I guess you, like you said, you just do that. But if you want to be the highest performing person and you want to get your joy out of that, then you got to take a little toll on that health. You got to eat maybe a little bit more protein or more carbs than would optimally be healthy, or you got to eat a little more calories, or you got to burn through a little bit faster than someone that wants to live to be 120 years old.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly spot on, and it kind of sums up exactly what I was saying there perfectly, in a sense of decide what your goal is, and then how do we get you to your goal. Like I said, as long as it's not contradictory, like I want to be really powerful, also let's get really flexible. Like some of that is, I want to be really powerful at this, like a squat, but now I've got hamstrings that can do the splits, and now I can't use them in my squat. So as long as we're not trying to do things that are opposing each other, and then we end up in an injured state from doing the thing that we want to do. And keeping that body there. I mean, that's kind of what the goal is.
All right, awesome, man. Anyway, I've kept you here for 48 minutes now.
I can go as long as you want, mate.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm happy to go longer. We're on a bit of a roll here.
Let me just check what time my next appointment is. That's a good point. 10 minutes time. No, what time is it? 20 past 1?
Yeah, 20 past 1.
Oh, right, cool. No, my phone's not, it's not adjusted from regionals. Yeah, I'm good. So Can we just quickly pause? Can I just quickly go to the toilet?
Yeah, sure, man. We'll pause that.
Cool. I'll be back in a minute.
All right, guys. Hey, we're back. So I was just telling James that, I've got some lower back issues. When I wake up in the morning, oh God, it's tight. But by the end of the day, it tends to feel a little bit better. I asked you if he's ever had any injuries, and he was just about to tell me. So, yeah. I
mean, when I played football, it was obviously the usual kind of I played in goal, so it was more impact injuries more than anything. Just getting broken collarbone, concussion, dead legs, those kind of things. But no, when I found CrossFit, like my first big injury in CrossFit was my lower back, which I did when I was deadlifting. And kind of actually that's how I got into this stuff. I'd already been exposed to. I'd been on a seminar to learn what I kind of practice now, and it made sense to me, but I wasn't kind of. Well, it made sense to me, but then I couldn't at that time see how I would be able to use it in the gym, because some of the stuff that we did on 5 days, I was like, I'm just going to look like a tool doing this stuff. Like, people are going to be like, what is he doing with his clients? And so I kind of didn't see it from a business point of view that it was great, whereas it was great to show somebody doing a squat with 5 plates on either side or whatever. But yeah, so I hurt my back, and then I started using the principles of like the stretching, the 3-dimensional stretching and stuff like that. And within 2 or 3 days, I was kind of like mobile, from being like pretty much just laid up on the floor. I went in to see a physio, and for a diagnosis more than anything. And I was like, I've never heard of popping my back, and what's going on? And I was told, I showed her what I'd been doing to kind of help my back, and said, I did this, and this, and it really helped. And then I was told, no, you shouldn't do that. You've done, I can't remember what she said at the time. You've done this to your back. You just need to lie down and do TVA. TVA contractions. Yeah. So you just need to do that.
How do you specifically contract your TVA? I can't even imagine how to do that.
It's the whole pulling up your ghoulies.
Yeah.
That one, supposedly. So she told me just to lie down and do that, and I had to build up how long I could do it for. Apparently I was over recruiting my abs and all kinds of stuff like this. So I went, well, she's a physio. She knows what she's doing. I'll listen. So I stopped what I was doing, and for the next 3 days, I'm in more pain than I was when I was doing what I was doing before. So I was like, okay, well, I'm in more pain now. Let's go back to doing what I was doing. And then that kind of got me into the plunge of, I spoke to somebody who'd been learning this stuff, and they rehabbed me. And I felt great coming out the back of it. Like when I got back to squatting, got back to deadlifting, I felt super strong.
Wow.
So I was like, I want to learn this stuff. And I've been learning it ever since, really. Wow. But yeah, that's how that was probably my last. That's my only CrossFit injury.
Awesome.
Since I played a lot more. I went back to playing football again, so that took up a lot of time. And again, just back to the good old sprained ankles, broken fingers, etc.
Like, as a coach, I almost like when someone comes in, they're like, my knee's feeling, and I'm like, oh no, and they're like, yeah, I was playing rugby and some big dude jumped on it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's less, that's less bad. That's just, you know what I mean? It's not like it's been something that's been building up, so then,
yes,
there might be an underlying weakness, and obviously you got to try and get it better, and you got to ease them back into it. But it makes me less nervous than out of nowhere, man, my knee just exploded for no reason today. Like that gets me like,
yeah, that's I hear what you're saying, and that is a thing, because we're trying to help these people. We're trying to keep them healthy and stuff like that, and to push them to that level, or themselves. The problem is most people ignore things. Like the amount of people's like, oh yeah, I got this niggle. I got this niggle in my shoulder a few weeks ago, and I just thought it'd go away, so I kept training on it, and now I can't pick my arm up. I'm like, if you'd have come to me after the first 3 times when it repeated itself, before you were unable to pick your arm up, you'd be able to get back training a lot sooner.
Yeah, I think
now you can't pick your arm up. we've got a lot more work to do, and I think people need to,
yeah. I think though, one of the problems with that is that I think your body has kind of got a bit of like a built-in, like, it will help you get through stuff. So once you're moving, once you get that blood flow, you're like, oh, that's gone away, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to do more overhead squats, you know. and then after the session, you know, the blood rushes away, and then it comes back to you worse than ever before. So it's I guess it's knowing whether, you know, the movement's just going to make it feel better at the time because it's driving some blood there, or if it's actually making it better long term. And I think I don't really know. I as an athlete, or you know, athlete, whatever, someone that works out, like, I'm not in tuned enough with my own body to know which is which, you know, and that's probably why I'd want to come see someone like you, maybe that's done, you know, a little bit more research into it, so you can kind of break it down.
Yeah.
But is there any kind of tips you could give to someone like me, that to help them realize whether an exercise is actually helping or just helping them feel better at that moment?
In terms of, is it an injury starting to come on? Is that what you mean?
So let's go back. You know, let's say you've got a tweaky shoulder.
Yeah.
And you know, crunches and clicks, and it's kind of a little bit sore. And then you do a workout with a ton of thrusters, and while you're doing the workout, you're like, oh, actually, after the, you know, 20th rep, starts to loosens off a bit, it feels okay, and you get through that workout. Yeah. Especially in a CrossFit environment when you got a little bit of adrenaline, people are kind of cheering you on and stuff, and you're like, yeah, I don't even feel pain, I'm great. And that might not be the best thing for it, whereas maybe doing some of your drills, you know, it makes it feel better at the time, and it's also helping it get better in the long run. Can you give maybe a tip to someone on whether, kind of how to identify which is which? Because maybe for some people those thrusters will help.
Yeah.
Or am I just asking way too much?
Yeah. No. Good question. Obviously, it depends on, like, whether a tissue is inflamed or a tissue is at that moment in time just overworking.
Okay.
Obviously, if a muscle's overworking, then there is a potential for inflammation. But when you kick off exercise, a lot of the time we are just using the strongest muscles first. Mm-hmm. Like, the body knows how to overcome the load, so it uses those quad dominance, whatever, so it goes straight there. Mm-hmm. And depending on the task, that allows you then, if it's not too stressful, to start using other muscles. So sometimes making an exercise easier, so going lighter on the thruster, could help, because then by moving through it, getting that blood flow there, the body's learning to use the shoulder.
I see.
To use all the muscles of the shoulder rather than just use the dominant muscles of the shoulder. Whereas if the task is too hard, then it can only use the same muscles, and then they get super inflamed because of the stress, etc. Or if the load is too heavy, then they're not strong enough to push it through the whole range of motion. So then actually they just stay in a range where all the big muscles can't even work. So then the rotator cuff gets slammed or whichever. Yeah, that is a good question. I think warming up, is it, like you kind of said it yourself in asking me the question, was warming up. When tissues get warm, they get more pliable. Mm-hmm. So pain goes away because they're warm and more pliable. So kind of like, but at least, so stiffness or tightness, what people perceive, like, so you going cold and going, oh, my shoulder's really stiff and tight, I need to go and smash it on a ball, I need to do X, Y, Z with it. It's like, but do you? Just get warm.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Like that's how a muscle gets pliable, by having heat go through it. Like by lying down on a ball, that's what it's, or foam rolling. In theory, the muscle's getting more pliable because you're increasing blood flow, but so does sitting on a bike. That will increase blood flow.
Yeah.
Then start to put it into the task that you want. And in that way, like what I've said before, is way back at the start of the interview was, that way there's no neurological issues coming about. We're actually just training the body to work better rather than negatively affect the neurology by switching off muscles. Because that's what the first law of massage, like obviously I've learnt massage, we're doing sports therapy, is normally you don't train after it. Nobody goes deep. You never go deep into a tissue. And then the person has to rest for a couple of days and not use that area because you don't want to have somebody have a new range of motion at that joint and affect how you've affected it neurologically and then go and train on it. But what people are doing is sitting on a ball and doing exactly what a massage therapist is told not to.
Wow, that is, because like you hear Kelly Starrett all the time. He'll be like, yeah, smash that stuff, get that full range of motion, and then crush a WOD to reinforce that movement pattern. And you're saying, like, maybe let your body kind of have some time with that new range of motion, get to know a little bit.
Yeah.
Before you start.
The other thing with range of motion, I mean, this is the huge one, because obviously the fitness industry goes through cycles. Yeah. Of fashions. So like at the moment, high intensity interval training, if you want to stick CrossFit in that thing, and insanity and blah blah blah, and just sprints on a treadmill, that's what's in. But so is flexibility training. Flexibility, like everyone's talking about yoga, everyone's talking about mobilizing, everyone's talking about this. Like in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was stability balls. So stability balls were everywhere. Everyone was on those doing single leg, whatever, and that's kind of died. But the industry's in a new fashion, and the problem with range of motion is range of motion has been given like this thing of like, okay, so you can't get into a position, so you can't get into the bottom of a squat, so it's flexibility. And it's then treated that everybody that can't squat below parallel is inflexible. Well, I've had a ballet dancer, who couldn't squat below parallel. Okay. Exactly. Because she was so flexible, her body was unstable.
Right.
Because her body was unstable, the body then went into... because of its own instability, it created overstability and wouldn't allow range of motion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's nuts. So
think about it like, I'll explain it for other people. So think of it like walking on ice. So the body, when we walk on ice, we walk with a really short stride pattern.
Yeah.
So the body it chooses the short stride pattern because it senses that it's unstable.
Okay, I get it.
So that was actually going on in a local level in her hips. The body was like, right, there's so much range of motion here, but I've got no control of it. So it creates overstability and a small stride pattern. So now she can't squat. Yeah. But they're kind of going, oh, well, let's treat everything with flexibility. No. So that's an issue. It's an issue in the industry.
So her problem is, like, she's not strong enough. Not that she's not mobile, but... So she's not mobile, not because she's not flexible, because she's not strong.
Yes.
And it's, I guess, so I guess mobility is a. When I think mobility, I think your functional capacity to control range of motion. So it's necessarily a mix of the two. Actually,
yes.
So just going back to the stability balls. See, in my head, I think that that's silly bullshit. to quote Mark Ripperto, is there a place for that? And have you ever used it or found success with that?
I used to use it back in the day when I didn't know any better.
Okay.
So in the early personal training days when you wanted to do something different, but I've not had. I've probably had a couple of people where I could probably justify using it, but that's the thing. It's like this is the thing with exercise. And that's kind of what I do in terms of the person is going, what does their body need, not what does the industry tell me that I should be doing. So I've probably had a couple of people where I could use a stability ball because they were so flexible and needed that stability. But then I'd then go, well, okay, do I need to use that? Possibly. But what are my side effects of using that ball? And does that then make their body better in one way but worse in another? So I'd then try and find another way around it still. I'd kind of use that. Stability ball would be my last kind of.
Yeah, I think
just the same as using a band to distract somebody's joint and put them into a ridiculous kind of joint position would be on the flip side.
I think like the one time I thought like maybe I could use a Bosu ball with this guy. There's a guy in the gym. Really nice guy, Dave Mansfield. He's got he had a 60-inch box jump, and there's a video on Instagram for that. And he's only like 5'8", like really explosive guy. But I think he was so good. He was so explosive and so good at turning off his antagonist muscles because he wasn't a big guy, but he's incredibly strong and explosive. That I think I was thinking maybe for him actually, if I get him on a mobility ball, it will kind of teach him it will kind of make him fire his antagonist muscles a little bit more, slow him down a bit, and maybe keep him a little bit less injured. Is that like right, the kind of is that a kind of situation when you'd use that, or was that me being like silly?
Which ball? What are you talking about? The ball?
Like I was like, maybe if I had him do like, maybe I didn't have a Bosu ball, so I never did it. But I was like, maybe if I had a Bosu ball and had him do some squats on that, just that learning to wobble would actually teach him to slow down a bit and kind of overfire his antagonist to stop him hyperextending his knee when he jumped and cleaned and snatched.
Yeah. This obviously sounds like a cop-out, but I'd have to see and test him.
Yeah.
Because that perception, especially with the box jump, because we've got like one of our records in the box jump in the gym isn't by a powerful guy, it's by a flexible guy.
Yep.
Because that's the issue with the box jump is, are we testing power or are we testing flexibility?
Yeah.
Because we can have powerful guys that actually can't get into that deep position, whereas in a flexible guy just gets effective at that. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know without seeing it, because it could be tightness hiding it, or it could be he could be too loose. But if he's powerful, then I'd be surprised if he was too flexible, because it'd be more like the over flexible that would go on it. Would go on the stability ball.
Yeah, he was a very flexible kind of guy. Like the first time he ever tried an overhead squat, it was like he had 7 inches of dorsiflexion, and he's very
right. Yeah. I mean, it could be worth a shot. Suck it and see. But if he's like that, then it's not a bad thing. But again, I'd still rather do it a different way than just having a Bosu ball. But that's the thing.
So one thing that always comes up when people are criticising CrossFit functional fitness in general is like the use of dangerous exercises, and the idea that these exercises are inherently bad. So things like kip and pull-ups, high rep Olympic weightlifting, high rep box jumps, maybe even kettlebells. I've heard some people say they're terrible, and some people think they're the best thing in the world. Do you assess people on a case-by-case basis to see whether they're kind of suited to do these movements, and and sometimes are they extremely valuable and maybe even help prevent injury?
Yeah, I'd take it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, if it was truly bad, then 100% of people should be injured.
Yep, that makes sense. Yep.
So for the people that aren't injured, clearly they work differently, have better function, and therefore can do those exercises. So then it comes down to that case-by-case basis: are you good enough?
Yeah.
Like, are your mechanics good enough? The mechanics be range of motion, strength, stability, etc., etc. All those things that make up human movement, all those skills, those 10 fundamental skills are what human movement is at the same time. So going back to what we were kind of saying before is, saying a squat, you can't get into a squat, saying it's flexibility. It can't be that, because it can't just be that, because when we move, it's all those skills being displayed at the same time, because that's what human movement is. And yeah, so it's case-by-case basis, assess those people and go, well, yeah, you're not strong enough to pull yourself up on a pull-up. So if you can't control yourself, if you're not strong enough to do that, how are you expecting your body to be able to do that at max speed from a kipping pull-up with your, because obviously then get into the physics and geek out biomechanics, F equals ma.
Yep.
Like, mass and acceleration, the force going through your shoulder is higher with the mass and acceleration of a kipping pull-up, and your mass increases because of that acceleration. So you weigh more on a kipping pull-up than you do on a strict pull-up, purely because of speed. So if you can't cope with your own weight statically, you can't cope with it on a kipping pull-up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, the thing with kettlebells and the high rep Olympic lifting, it comes down to it only injures people because of application and execution of it.
Yeah.
Going into kind of going into a workout too hard. I mean, I'm rehabbing a girl at the moment with her programming, and I gave her 50 empty bar bear complexes. So she had to do unbroken empty bar bear complex for 50 reps.
You're a horrible person. That's...
Yeah, I'm not nice. I'm a bitter old man. But it's that thing of, with rehabbing her back, if I can break her with a 20-kilo bar, then I know that she's going to break when it comes to 5x5, 2 times a week, over 12 weeks consistently with ascending load, increasing percentage. I know she's going to break through accumulative fatigue if I can break her with a 20-kilo bar.
Yeah, I see.
So it has to become a part of, like, that's how you make an exercise less likely to break somebody, because they've got to be able to cope with it on that low grade repetitive level. Because most sport is endurance, like the ability to keep going.
Yeah, I see.
And especially in CrossFit,
yeah,
like, is how can you elicit? Like, you see some of the guys there at the weekend, and you got some guys that literally their form does not change.
Yeah, that's the big thing that everyone always says about Froning, isn't it? You know, his last rep looks like his first rep, and it's just consistent across the board.
Exactly. How many people can say that about themselves? There's not many people that can say that about themselves. So therefore, like, don't complain that you're injured if you're doing 3/4 of your workout looking horrendous. Like, you gotta be bulletproof and be able to maintain that mechanic, like what CrossFit Level 1 preaches: mechanics, consistency, intensity. Like, it's as intense. Yes, you get a faster time, but it's as intense to do that workout maintaining the correct position. Like, that is intensity. And I've done that with a few guys where I give them a workout and they're not allowed to show me bad form, and they finish it and go, that was well harder just going all out. It's like, yeah, because you do using all your weak muscles by staying in the right position, because you don't want to be, the body just goes to wants to go to where it's strong. So when it's tired, it'll go where it's strong, which might not be where it's efficient, but
I see what you mean.
Where true efficiency is, but it's where their body's efficiency is, which is then opens injury and everything like that.
So that's kind of like you're making a huge sacrifice now. Sorry, you're making a huge sacrifice in the long term to do something, so your body will get you through it now. But I guess biologically, probably the way we're built is that it kind of assumes that that's a one-off. And I guess the problem comes is when you're doing that every day, multiple times a day, for weeks, months, years on end. And having it kind of sell out like that all the time.
Yeah, and that comes down to the person's own integrity to be able to maintain doing that. The coach to be reinforcing it. The programming is multifaceted on that as to why somebody snaps himself up. Some of it's their own fault. Some of it's the coaches. Some of it's
bad luck
depending on bad luck, what it is. I had a guy that I was rehabbing him. He had multiple dislocations of his shoulder, and he couldn't do a kipping pull-up. But we're going to a point where he can do loads now, no problem. In fact, he doesn't even think about it anymore.
Wow.
But along that road, we had a setback because he works abroad a lot, and he came off a flight from China, so completely different time zone, and decided to come into the gym because he likes to kind of flush it all out. And the WOD on the day was snatching, and in fact it was building to heavy, and then on his last set he felt a partial dislocation. It just slipped back in again, it's something he'd had many times before, but he was good about it. But the reason it happened, we'd been going so well, the reason it happened was because he'd been on a flight and he's in a different time zone. His nervous system is all but shot, so it couldn't all of a sudden its reflexes is down by a millisecond, and now you got a partial dislocation of your shoulder. And that's the thing. My arguments against the stretching, the neurological switching off. If you're switching that muscle off, then what is working for you? You've got
tendons,
nothing
joints.
else.
Yeah,
is all those things, because you've just switched off the only thing that can work. So it's one you don't want to be in that scenario. But that was something we learned from, and then from there, now when he still works abroad, he comes back and all he does is pretty much a blowout on a rower.
Yeah. Just to mechanically safe, not going to hurt himself, get some blood flow. Yeah. I actually I remember one of the best I ever felt last year. Actually, before I hurt my back, I was probably in the best shape I've ever been, and I was following a lot of the OPT principles. And I was doing just every morning. I was on the airdyne rower, pushing a sled. Maybe I was doing active recovery work every morning. And I think I actually felt better from that than I ever did from stretching. And I felt looser more often. I got more flexible from going on an airdyne. And it didn't make sense to me at the time, but everything you said today, it says that I was kind of accidentally applying some good principles.
Yeah, well, I mean, by doing that, because the problem is that what you're talking about there is recovery, and people see themselves. Soreness isn't inflexibility; it's soreness.
Yeah. And
soreness is what stops us from being able to get in a position due to what we did the day before. So by you doing that morning recovery stuff, actually all you did was take away you improved your body system at recovering, so it got less sore. Because you got less sore, your range of motion was better because it was less sore. Whereas people are seeing that, they're going, "Oh my god, my legs are so sore, I need to foam roll them." Like, yeah, that's only taking the pain away, but the pain actually doesn't. The pain doesn't affect you. The pain only affects your movement in your head. The pain doesn't actually mean that you are tighter. It just means that you're sore.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of that misconception of what tightness versus soreness is. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of see what you mean. Like, there's a difference between a physically tight muscle and you not wanting to use the full range of motion because it's overworked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, I got something right. All right. You know what? Just to finish this off, so you're a sports therapist. Is that
yeah,
it? And
coach.
coach, sports therapist,
trainer, coach. Yeah.
I know a lot of people when they get injured, they'll go to see an osteopath, a physio, or a chiropractor. I know. I'm sure there are good chiropractors out there, but I've met a couple and they come across as hooky. I think they come across as kind of hooky. Like I feel like they're shoveling bullshit.
Right, okay.
Some of them. I'm sure there's good ones, but a couple that I've met have been like, I don't really know. Like I met one that had just absolutely no interest in any kind of soft tissue work, or that soft tissue could be the cause of pain, or or cause of the problem. And he was like, it's just that, the subluxations not subluxed properly, or whatever he said. And I was like, I don't know, man. I feel something pulling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, like, in your experience, where do you suggest people go when they have an issue, other than obviously get in touch with you? Are there some some institutes or maybe some seminars, courses that you can really vouch for and you think are effective in actually helping movement dysfunction and pain?
I mean, well, we're starting to get the kind of seminars moving. Okay. This year we've got one coming up in September, and then there'll be more released later next year, and it'll be like a bit of a seminar series. So, like, if you attend 3 seminars, then we'll give you like a level 1 certificate, because each seminar weekend will be on something, like, all kind of building into each one. And we've kind of got 2 levels that we're kind of right in there. So that there is us doing the seminar side of things for the coaches, to give them a kind of an understanding of where we're coming from, and try and help them and get rid of the hockey balls, the bands, the etc. Make those defunct and worthless. But yeah, we're doing that. But I mean, in terms of I don't like. There are good physios, there are good osteos, there are good chiropractors, and it's not going to the first one that you type in on Google in your area, but going to one who's someone you know has done good work with somebody. So doing that, and making sure, I recommend basically. Yeah. I recommend. As soon as people, I mean, I had somebody a physio told this girl that she should never ever squat. However, and because if she kept squatting, she'd never be able to have kids. Apparently, yeah. Oh, it was extreme. Okay. And then I said, "Oh, what did she do to you?" Well, she laid me down on a bed, did this with me, and then stood me up, pushed me forward, pulled me backwards, and said all those things to her. Obviously, that will have been miscontorted through emotions of the person, etc., as to been that. But basically, I was like, so she didn't actually watch you squat. Like, she didn't see or understand or have any thought or understanding of the task. And it's like, you can't understand what a body is doing by lying it down, which is my same philosophy of, like, don't treat it lying down, because you're you're not putting the body through the same forces. As soon as the body's replicating all these.
Oh, hello. Hey there. Sorry, I think we've broken up.
You all right?
Yeah. Sorry, I think the line just dropped there. I don't know if it's my end or yours.
I have no idea. What was the last thing? You heard?
I think you're saying you talk about a girl that was told never to squat again, and she had never seen her squat by her. The physio had never seen her squat, and you're saying you've got to treat the movement and you got to treat the recovery specifically. So you want to be on your feet. You don't want to be treating that lying down.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's that thing of like, how can you tell someone what their body can or can't do when they're lying down and under no stress? Like, it's one of those. And if there is stress on the body, like we've already talked about today, it adapts so well to anything and everything we do to it. So it therefore can be trained and has to be able to train. So I don't believe in there being many injuries that aren't treatable. So finding that therapist, it's finding one that's recommended and one that understands exactly what you do need and how they can facilitate that. Obviously, I'd say everyone should just come to Manchester, but no, there's plenty of people that are good at what they do out there. There is no, like I say, there's no perfect program, therefore there's no perfect therapist. There are just some very good therapists. Like choose your thing, and So.
All right, excellent, dude. I've actually got to wrap it up now.
Cool, no worries.
Just quickly, can you give your website, Facebook, Instagram, how people can get hold of you if they do want to get some help?
Website is jamesjowseytraining.co.uk. That's currently been. It's still, the old one's still live, but that's currently been rebuilt. Cool. Email is jj@jamesjowseytraining.com, not .co.uk.
Okay.
Facebook page, just James Jowsey. Like my personal one is my work one. Instagram, just getting into that. James.Jowsey, I think. Or is not at James Jowsey. I think that's just at James Jowsey. And Twitter is at 3D Therapy.
All right.
Yeah,
sweet, man. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking today. I feel like I learned a lot. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this to kind of pick out everything you said.
Yeah, sorry about that, mate.
No. It's great. It's great. Yeah, this is by far the longest one I've done. But I kind of like this longer format. It's good. It's nice to kind of let people rattle off and really get in depth with it.
Yeah, I think, people might switch off. I think that they say like 20 minutes, don't they? They say 20 minutes is the optimum. So, I mean, you've got a 3-parter here if you want, mate. Or
I'll run it as one. And I guess people can stop when they want. But I think a lot of people are going to listen all the way through this because we do cover a lot of ground, and I think it's a lot of stuff people want to know. All right, man. Anyway, on that note, thanks so much, and hopefully I'll talk to you again. I know you've got way more stuff rattling around in that head of yours, so thank you. All right, and bye.
Cheers, James. Nice to meet you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.